you like to drive around and talk about the latest happenings, this is the channel you need. So subscribe and follow Carmentary.
Alright folks, it is time for another episode of Carmentary. We love Carmentary. I'm going to do this one in English, and then I'll try to do the same topic in Japanese. So we'll have back-to-back episodes talking about the same subject. Let's announce the subject for this evening. I'm going to talk about snowboard tune-ups. Snowboard tuning. Okay. So maybe some people have lost all their interest now. I don't know. It's kind of a nerdy subject. There's not a huge audience for it, but I'm very passionate about it, and I think it requires and it needs some serious talking about, and no one is talking about it. There's a lot of people out there talking about snowboarding itself, snowboards, snowboard design, all the things that come with it, the lifestyle, whatever, whatnot. There's a huge population of people around the world who snowboard and enjoy snowboarding and free riding and powder and half pipe and park and whatever. And no one, I mean almost no one, talks about tuning up your snowboard. It's kind of like the thing you do at home in private, and no one like mentions it. I don't know why, because it is incredibly important. It is the most important thing you can do after you purchase a snowboard. If you go out and you buy a new snowboard and you don't get it tuned up, you just take what you buy and go straight to the hill and start riding that thing, it's like, I don't even know what to compare it with. I was trying to find some comparisons for that, and the only one I could come up with, it sounds really stupid. It's like buying a banana and eating it without taking off the peel. That's just like a stupid thing to compare something to, but that is how bad. I mean, you know, you've ever tried to eat the skin of a banana? It tastes like crap. It tastes like shit. You would never eat a banana with the skin on. You peel it off, and then you have this delicious banana. That is what I equate not tuning up your snowboard to. Now, okay, I think you understand how I'm kind of serious about this subject. Right now, why? I don't think anybody gets it. I don't think anybody, they're like, all right, I tune up my board, I put some wax on there. And this is a problem. When we say tune up, when we talk about tuning up a snowboard, everyone just assumes you're talking about putting wax, like getting a hot wax done. I got a hot wax done. Not just the old rub-on wax, right? That's not what I'm talking about. When the definition of the word tune-up should mean not just sharpening your edges, but actually adjusting them and the angle of the edges to suit the board you own, your riding style, the place and the terrain and the type of snow that you're going to be riding on. So there's a lot of factors in there. And basically, nobody these days talks about that. Nobody's thinking about that. It's just like, you know, all people want to, and you look at the magazines, you look at the media, and everything is, you know, board test. We did the board test. You know, or hey, such and such a brand is going to be having their board test. You got to go over there and test out their boards. And it's just it's a joke, because even the best, most expensive snowboards on the market, for me here in Japan, that's like a Genten stick or a field earth board, the tip all the way to the tail, all the way around, you have a steel edge that has been glued on there in that little groove that's on the edge of the board. It's a 90-degree straight cut steel piece of metal that goes all the way around the board. They've done nothing to it. It's just come straight out of the factory as it is, which is a 90-degree angle. You should not be riding something like that. It's going to ruin the experience of riding a great snowboard. It's like you go and you buy a brand new Porsche Cayenne Turbo S, an amazing one. It's like primo car you dream about riding, and you buy it. You don't put any oil in it, you don't put any gas in it, and you're like, just turn it on and go for it. You're gonna screw that thing up, or it's gonna screw you up. It's terrible. And I really think, I'd love to hear in the comments, is this something you've ever thought about? And what do you do for tuning your board's edges? Okay, now let's get into some, so okay, we talked about how important it is, and now I've talked about sort of the technical side, that basically all these snowboard brands, all these big companies, whether it's Burton, it's K2, it's Ride, or it's Genten, or whatever, no one wants to take the responsibility to tune up the edges for the end user, because, and I understand this, everyone's, you know, different body weights, different foot size, different riding style, so there's going to be adjustments to how you want the board to be. So the board, each board is designed with certain aspects of, you know, nose width, tail width, side carve, you have all these things. Edge contact length, there's all these numbers in there. But no one wants to go in there and change the angle of the edge, because that's a personal kind of thing. Some people like a really straight 90-degree edge. What does that mean? A 90-degree edge is gonna, like, you can't get any straighter than that, right? When you look at the sole of the board, you have this flat sole, although some boards are 3D shaped, you have different board shapes now, but just for the sake of this piece, flat sole, you come to the edge, does it slope off a little bit, or is it completely flat? If you have a completely flat 90-degree cut there, when you ride the snowboard, it's going to be catchy. It also means it's going to carve really strong. It's going to have a very strong, it's going to hold an edge. But it's going to be very catchy when you're like trying to go straight, or you're going between turns. It's going to lock up or hook up on the snow, and there's going to be very little forgiveness there. When you buy like edge tuning machinery, like files and stuff, they'll come with different degrees. There's like an 89-degree edge angle. There's an 88-degree edge angle. There's different degrees of how much slope you want off the edge, so you can sort of bevel the edges. Okay, that seems simple enough. So you could go get a file. You could get to an 89 degrees, you know, little slope, so it's not as catchy, and we're done. End of argument. No, sorry, that's not how it works. What I'm into and what I'm impressed by is there's certain people out there now who have been snowboarding and involved in snowboarding for like 35 years or more, and they've become what I would call a master tuner. And for me personally, it's a guy named Takeda-san. Takeda Hideki is his full name. He was originally a racer, snowboard racer, originally a skater, got into snowboarding, became a snowboard racer, then a free rider. He has been snowboarding for, maybe 40 years now or more. He's 55 years old, so he's 10 years older than me. And his brand is called T-Tune. He has a tune-up sort of small factory. It's just him. It's just one guy. really develop a technique to tune up the boards. He calls it in stages. He's got from stage 1 to stage 4. So you have different stages that he can tune the board to. And he does it in a real personal manner. So he talks to the person who brings him the board and, you know, how do you want to ride? What kind of riding style do you like? Do you like banks and real featured terrain? Do you just go straight on the course? Do you want to carve really deeply? Do you want to do laybacks a lot? You know, there's different styles of riding, different styles of turning, and then of course he takes into he brings in the, you know, the specific board that person's riding and what that board might be made for, and tries to accentuate or develop it even more. And this is an amazing art form as far as I'm concerned. I mentioned earlier about like 3D board design. A lot of boards are made with like a 3D shape now, especially field earth boards. So those boards, even with a factory tuned 90-degree edge, because the board curves at the edges, when you put it on snow, it's going to be like this, like a spoon. So the edges are not going to catch as much. And you can actually take that without a tune-up and have a really, you know, a pretty good experience on it. Have a different experience. Still, better to get it tuned up, of course. But what a guy like Takeda-san does, who I consider the master tuner, is he'll take a board and he will, you know, a lot of people talk about detuning. That's another word that's used. You want to dull the edges at the nose and the tail. That's kind of and that's a real rough piece of commentary as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's really generalizing what's going on there. The contact points up at the nose of the board and at the tail of the board are super important. They're the first part of the board that comes in contact with the snow, and the very last part of the board that comes in contact with the snow. So the nose area comes into contact with the snow. You want the nose to have float. You don't want it to catch at the nose, which can lead to catching an edge and flipping over. You want it to be able to ride up like on a wall. If you're coming into a wall, you want the board to not carve into the snow, but to actually ride up it. So what he does is he creates a 3D kind of beveled shape to the edge of the board, from that, you know, tip of the nose area to where the side carve, or the, you know, the part where you need an edge to actually carve into the snow to hold a turn. In that sensitive area there, he creates a really dull round edge coming into a very sharp, generally like an 89-degree edge. And he's become incredibly good at knowing that sweet spot, where that should happen. How much distance does it take to go from a really round, soft edge into a really sharp edge? Same for the tail. The tail on your heel side turn is really important. You want a little bit of a longer, sharp edge, maybe on your heel side if you're really pulling those heel side turns. Toe side edge. But there's got to be a point at the end there where, again, it rounds up into a dull kind of shape, so that the tail, when you're coming out of a turn, you're deep into a carve and then you want to pop out of it. This is a difficult moment in a snowboard turn. Your entire weight, it's a lot of pressure on that heel or toe edge when you're in there, and then you want to come up out of that and go into the next turn. And that's a real moment where you can catch an edge. Everybody says, oh, I caught an edge and flipped over. It's really common, again, with beginners. But I think it's also really common with beginners because they're all riding on boards that have not been tuned up correctly. Super important, especially for the beginner. This is another common thing. Like, people are, oh, I'm just a beginner. I don't need to spend all that money to get a tune-up. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The beginners are the people who should be getting the best tune-up and the most specific tune-up, because you need every little bit of help you can get so that you can improve your snowboarding quickly and not have to be a beginner anymore. Then you can really start enjoying it. So, the nose and the tail going from a round, dulled edge to a very sharp edge. This is what he calls like a stage 4 tune-up, where it's a 3D shape to the edge at all points around the board. Now there's all kinds of other techniques in there, you know, the angle of the edge. I went to his tune-up shop like 2 days ago and watched him tune up a friend's board and then my board. And he used all kinds of different files and diamond stones and sandpaper, and you know, there's so much equipment that goes into it. And he's got a ton of little techniques that he's basically developed over the last, you know, however many years. Let's just say 10 years of professional, you know, being a tune-up master. But all of that comes from all that riding experience that he's had, and being a really good rider, being a really technical rider, and just being incredibly knowledgeable about snowboarding itself and the whole concept. He was saying things like, he was really picky about the edge being super smooth. So when the tune-up was finished, you know, I touched the edge, and he's like, touch this. It's super sharp, like you could cut a piece of it, you cut your finger on it, you know, super easy. But at the same time, it's so smooth and soft, it feels silky. It's like this sharpened piece of steel, yet it's just smooth to the touch. And he was saying things like, almost, it's like a spiritual statement, like, you want to be gentle to the snow, was like a thing he said in Japanese, of course. You know, he doesn't want to just go and just carve up the snow, you know, and cut it. You want to come in and be gentle with the snow. We're trying to have fun and play in the snow. Why do we need to destroy it? I was like, wow, you know, that's like a real Japanese craftsman kind of statement, you know, trying to be gentle to the snow, and yet at the same time, you know, have a real sharpened piece of steel that's going to hold an edge. I thought that was really cool. So there's a lot of, you know, thought process, experience, technical stuff that is all funneled into this sort of amazing, you know, knowledge bank of how to tune up a snowboard. And I think this is a lost art, an unknown art, and yet the future of snowboarding is really, it's 100% dependent on this being like more master tuners, more high-grade tune-ups, more knowledge about this, more promotion from the brands, you know. But it's way out there, man. Like when I went to Takeda-san's tune-up shop, at the same time the brand K2 was having a demo for all their dealers all over Japan. They call it a K2 meeting, and it's K2 and Ride are their brands, and they have skis as well. And all the shop reps and stuff come, and they spend like a week testing all the boards. And we went out that morning with a bunch of people and did some riding around the resort. I would not ride, I will never ever again just go in and demo a snowboard. To me it's like, I would now consider it like a risk of injury, okay, to go and test a board, a new snowboard. And why? Because they're not tuned up. They spend all this money to produce these new sample boards, bring them to faraway locations, bring all these dealers and all these people to come and test them, and they've been factory tuned, which is like, to me that word factory tune is like, you might as well just say piece of shit, you know. It's a joke, it's nothing. You're gonna have, you know, super sharp edges at the nose and the tail, guaranteed, man. No one is properly detuning their sample boards and making them easier to ride. And in a way I understand it. You know, you've got, maybe they got 50 to 100 boards, you know, and who do you get to like prep all those boards? just so the dealers can ride them and test them. But it's like so important, man. It's like, you know, your judgment of the board is going to be completely different if it's a well-tuned up board or just a standard factory tune. Completely different. Genten Stick, for years, they had Takeda-san working with them, and they would tune up all their demo boards before they sent them out to be demoed around the country for dealers and average people or whatever. Super important thing to do, and I think that is a major part of why Genten Stick has such a core following and becomes so successful in Japan and around the world, is that when you come and you test a board that's $1,400 when you buy it, you want it to ride really good. So they realize that. They're like, well, we better tune up all the boards, maybe not to stage 4, but at least to stage 2 or something. And people are going to have this superior experience, but they're not going to realize it's because the board was tuned up. They're just going to go, oh, this is a great board, I'm going to buy it. So in a way, that's a dangerous thing too, because then they buy it and they go and ride it and go, whoa, this is not the same board I demoed. And then someone says, hey, you should get your board tuned up by one of the master tuners. Okay, so I think you see where I'm going with this. I think there's a big responsibility on a lot of the major snowboard brands to really, really think about this and maybe create new programs, maybe really rework what is considered to be a factory tune. I think they could do a lot better. I think there's a lot of things that you could do, kind of a standard stage 1 kind of tune that would take a brand new board and kind of get it into a state where you could just go out and ride it, and it's not gonna catch an edge. It's gonna be smooth and flowing, and yet, you know, then from there the customer can be like, I want it even more like that, or no, I just want it to, you know, whatever the person wants to do. They can still be flexible with it. You know, edges of a board, they're finite, so if you keep scraping away at them, eventually they will disappear and you'll be left with no edges. But it takes a long time and many, many tune-ups to get to that point. You will be wanting to buy a new snowboard before you can completely, like, scrape away the edges on your snowboard, that's for sure. I hope people, you know, if you hear this and you go, well, man, geez, I never thought about that, you know, I never really I just thought tuning my board was waxing my board. I won't even go into waxing today, because that's a whole nother subject. I don't think it's as difficult a subject as, or it's not as difficult a thing to do. If you want to learn how to hot wax your board properly, there's tons of tutorials on the internet, I'm sure. And it's, you know, if you buy a good iron and you have the right wax temperature and you use wax paper, I recommend, you know, and you don't screw up the temperature of the iron, you're not going to ruin your board. You scrape it off and you brush it, and you're pretty good. Just the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's not that hard. I've been snowboarding 35 years. I'm really into this. I've known Takeda-san for years, and yet I'm still, I would even go so far as to say, terrible at tuning up my snowboard. Now I'll tell you why I know this, and this will be my closing comment. And this should drive home the point. I bought, if you watch the vlogs a lot, maybe you noticed, I bought a Chaser by Genten Stick this season. In December I bought it. It's the widest board in the Genten lineup. I bought it, I was so excited, I wanted to ride it right away. They said, you want to get it tuned up right there at the store? And I said no. I'll do that myself, and I'll ride it a couple times, and then I knew I would take it to T-Tune, to Takeda-san, and get him to tune it up eventually. That's what I do with all my boards. But I went home and I was like, okay, I gotta just, you know, I gotta dull the nose and the tail, I gotta do this. I did it, what I thought was pretty good. I was like, okay, I think I did a pretty good job on this. Takeda-san might even be impressed with my technique. I went out, I rode it twice or 3 times, and I was kind of a little disappointed. I was like, I thought this was like gonna be different. And in fact, it's what I was just talking about earlier. 2 years before, Taro-san, the founder of Genten, had loaned me a chaser when we were at a cat tour one day. And I'll bet that board was tuned up because I had an amazing ride on it, and I had remembered that. And I was like, wow, the chaser, that's a really cool, it's really wide, but it carves really good, and it's really quick to turn, and I really like that board. So I'm gonna buy it. So I buy it, and I ride it, and I didn't have the same experience that I had when I tested it. I was like, this is definitely, I need to go to Takeda-san, I need to get this tuned up, and just see how much it changes the way the board feels. I took it in, he worked his magic on it, I took it home, I had already waxed it, so that yesterday, I went up to Kokusai with my family, with the girls, and we all rode, and the board was incredible. It was a completely different experience than I had had those 3 days before. Completely different. It was like I had gone from driving this car to driving the Porsche Cayenne Turbo S with all the extras. Like, yeah, like a highly tuned sports car. Incredible carving, incredible turn-to-turn quickness, incredible stability, yet being able to pop into like a layback with, you know, just effortlessly. It blew me away. Suddenly that chaser board was like the best snowboard I had ever ridden. And yet 4 days earlier when I rode it, I was like, I don't know, something's wrong with this, and I really don't know what it is. So that is how much getting your edges tuned can change the experience on a snowboard. 100% change. So I'm backing him totally. Now, around the globe, I'm sure there are quite a few master tuners. I would love to see a list, or maybe, you know, people could be like, hey, there's this guy in France, he's really amazing, whatever. I would love to see some names coming up, but I think it's a small group. I think it's a really small group. There's definitely way more highly skilled snowboarders and people who can snowboard really good. There's way more of them than guys who can tune up a board really well. But we need to work on that. We need to get it to the point where there's a whole bunch of guys out there, and girls, whatever, who can tune up a board really, really well. Super important for the future of this sport. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was food for thought. If you love snowboarding and you have some snowboards around, you know, maybe pull them out and really have a look at your edges. You know, and things like rust on the edge and those little burrs. Like if you run your finger along the edge and you're like, tick, like, ooh, ow. It's an absolute no-no. Even if you don't hit rocks and trees, just like ice, like really hard packed ice can really scrape your edges. You'll see like these kind of diagonal little scratches, and they'll be rough to the touch. All that stuff is making a really big difference to your riding experience. It's slowing you down. It's space, those little scratches are space for ice to build up, and yeah, we could go on forever here, but you know, even if your board is not tuned up super good, you know, at least you could get like a deburring stone or one of those little diamond stones, and you could go over it and make sure it's smooth, because that alone is going to be a huge change to your riding experience. All right, tonight was a night episode of Carmentary. Carmentary night version. Highly passionate talk about tuning up your snowboard. So get out there, tune up your snowboard or get it tuned up by one of the tune-up masters. Try to find one and enjoy the experience even more. I'll see you guys next time on Carmentary. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've noticed that I have more people watching my videos who are unsubscribed than subscribers, and I'd like to remedy that. So,
this is the channel you need.
Drive
So
safe.
subscribe and follow Carmentary.